and Facebook. If you are on Just Inform and you are watching right now, I greatly appreciate it. If you have not done so yet, make sure that you register for Just Inform and be part of this evolution in social media that we have created. Obviously, if you are on Just Inform right now, then you know where to watch it. But if you are trying to watch it on justinform.com, you can do so by going to the MCS. After you register, you go to the MCSC contributor page, and that will actually allow you to watch me live on the network contributor page. So, I know a lot of people have probably been waiting for my response as in regards to the 12 Russian indictments that Rod Rosenstein announced recently. That I'm trying to be nice and understanding and trying not to get too upset because, well, probably like yourself, I hate when people waste my time. Right? I hate when people try and feed me BS, try and feed me that Ben Shapiro, but they call it steak. You know? And that's pretty much what we've seen. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on how Rod Rosenstein was implicated in Seth Rich's recent case, but I just want to say that I do find it extremely coincidental that I want to say it was the day after the press conference. A witness who has not announced his name yet, but he is going by the pseudonym of Luke. He actually said that there were three people involved in the case, and in the Seth Rich murder, and that one of them was ATF, the other was DEA, and there was another person, but he couldn't remember what his affiliation was. But he knew this. He's claiming to have known this, I should say, because he actually knows the people involved from working with them in the past, and he's had overheard extensive conversations where they discussed the Seth Rich murder case. Now, which I'm glad he actually touched on. At first, I was skeptical, and I understand why a lot of people would be skeptical of that particular part. Like, why would people just talk about that openly? Well, the unfortunate truth of the matter is, when it comes to black ops and when it comes to these type of people, they're mostly around other people who think like they do and also do the work that they do, which in this particular case would be just another form of espionage. And so he said that these people were known as Rod Rosenstein's like right hand men. Now, some people think that undermines for some reason what we have found out in the past, but I actually feel like it bolsters the argument. If anything, that does not mean that Seth Rich is or is not the leaker. However, the evidence offered combined with this, with this recent release of indictments, weirdly enough, also around, I think the indictments were announced either on or the day after the anniversary of Seth Rich, which is really weird. If not, I think it was like maybe 2 days. But yeah, it was just really weird. And I don't think that well, no, actually, I know for a fact. There's no such thing as a coincidence in politics. Every announcement is calculated. Every press release is reviewed over and over and over and over and over again. It's no such thing as a coincidence. And so when this guy comes out and says this, and then he actually says that he's taken a polygraph, he actually gave his intel to his evidence to the Senate, to the House Intelligence Committee. So they've already interviewed him, and that kind of like took me aback, right? And this press conference even took me aback because, well, I thought there was going to be nobody there. I thought there may have been a couple of people there, but you know how the media is about the Seth Rich investigation, right? Specifically, the media totally avoids talking about it. You get scrubbed from YouTube for bringing it up. If they did it, when they finally stopped avoiding the conversation of the Seth Rich investigation, everybody who discussed it was attacked for being a right-wing conspiracy theorist, even though the only reason the Seth Rich murder investigation became such a big deal was because progressives were actually pushing it when the murder first took place in July. So it was hard for me to see any of that as a coincidence, especially given that not only did some of the independent media show up, so Jason Goodman of Crowdsourced the Truth showed up, along with a couple of others, but Washington Post showed up, the Daily Beast showed up, New York Times showed up, New York Post showed up, I believe The Hill even showed up to this event that they claimed first of all, it was weird because when Jack Berkman, who is the witnesses or the attorney dealing with the investigation, whenever he announced this, the only ones who would even report that there was a press release were those on the right, and I believe Gateway Pundit, which leans right, from my past interactions with them. But Daily Beast was there, Washington Post was there, I believe even the Daily Caller was there. And so they all knew about this press conference. They knew that it was important enough to send reporters there. And yet none of them reported that the press conference was even taking place. But even more surprisingly so, there were some huge potential revelations in the press conference. Mind you, we're living in an era where the Russiagate story is 100% true, 100% factual, 100% proven, even if it's been unproven and disproven and not proven at all. Sorry. So we're living in that era where we can blindly accept, or where the nation can generally blindly accept propaganda that Russia interfere with our elections in favor of Donald Trump, and apparently in favor of Bernie Sanders, and in favor of Jill Stein also. I know it's still really weird coincidence that everybody who pissed off Hillary Clinton, Russia hates. It's really weird. I don't get it. Russia loves. Everybody who pissed off Hillary Clinton, Russia loves them. That's just really coincidental, I'm sure. But they didn't cover the Daily Beast, Washington. No, the Daily Beast did a smear piece, of course. That's why they go to places. But the Daily Beast, Washington Post, New York Times, all these articles or all these publications that sent representatives, they didn't cover what the witness discussed the next day, even though the witness said some pretty damning things. In fact, he said more than damning things. He said things that if you match up the timeline, the evidence that we have right now, the facts that we know, and then with his story, if you match those things up, it's like, oh snaps, there might be more to this than I originally thought. Because for one thing, he talks about the fact that there was something stolen. The USB flash drive, the infamous or famous, depending on how you look at it, flash drive that everybody knew existed, but nobody knew what it was, if it was on his person when he was murdered. And it was called over and over again a botched robbery, but nothing was stolen. Apparently, this guy is alleging that this USB flash drive was stolen. And he said that, according to the people that he overheard over, a series of conversations over the last couple of years, he said that this is the reason why they killed him, that USB flash drive, and that they altered emails. So the DNC, it was a little confusion, remember? Elizabeth Lee Voss actually reported on the flash drives actually going, that Guccifer 2 was based out of the United States, that somebody in the U.S. transferred those files, and they were released from the U.S. And then later we found out that I believe it was Snowden, came out immediately and was like, the CIA has the capability to make anything look like it came from anywhere. You, if you really wanted to, have the capability to make something look like it came from Russia, Ukraine, etc., etc. So we later found out that Guccifer 2.0 had also messed with some of the emails. So whereas the emails that WikiLeaks had were untouched, right? The WikiLeaks that the DNC leaks that Guccifer 2.0 leaked were tampered with, peculiarly enough. Now, what does that mean? That means that there are a lot of things that are not adding up according to the story that we know for, like the facts, the forensic facts, the story that this witness is telling us, and then these Russian indictments that try to implicate Guccifer 2.0, saying that these guys in Russia somewhere were Guccifer 2.0, but all the transfers made were made based out of the United States. Now, Adam Carter of Disobedient Media did a very good job of breaking this down into a few quick bullet points, and they were literally all the bullet points that I was going to cover. So I want to go ahead and read to you all a little bit of what he said, and then I'll break down what I believe are the most important points. So he says on July 13th, 2018, an indictment was filed by Special Counsel Robert Mueller, which, by the way, I want to talk about in more detail later because I'm still trying to figure out why Robert Mueller is indicting people. Just the whole reason Mueller was brought on was because they believed that the Trump campaign had purposely colluded with Russia in order to have the election swayed into his favor. So therefore, the people working under Trump or appointed by Trump would have a conflict of interest. I know, considering Andrew McCabe and James Comey and Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. I know it's ironic. We get it. But because it could be potentially a conflict of interest, they wanted to bring in Robert Mueller. But his only purpose was to find the link from the Trump campaign directly to Russian intelligence that is working for the government on a government salary. And yet, once again, we're seeing Robert Mueller make an indictment of somebody absent from actually implicating anybody in the Trump campaign. In fact, the people that he's indicted, he's never going to be able to touch. He's never going to be able to get his hands on them. But let's continue with this article. So the author is responding to the indictment because it features claims about Guccifer 2.0 that are inconsistent with what has been discovered about the persona, including the following, which is what I was just talking about. Evidence was found over 500 days ago relating to the Guccifer 2.0 persona that showed that they deliberately manipulated files to have Russian metadata. I mean, that's a pretty huge gap, right? I mean, that's you should probably mention that when you're reading that indictment at the press conference, but that's neither here nor there. We know the process used to construct the documents, which goes back to what I was saying. Guccifer 2.0 tampered with the documents. We know this for forensic fact. I'll post a link to this article, by the way, into the video so you can view it after you're done. But we know for a forensic fact that those documents were touched. They were real. That's what makes it even more interesting. The documents that Guccifer 2.0 had were indeed real. They did indeed come from the DNC. The difference is, for some reason, these were tampered with, but the WikiLeaks documents were not. Even the witness in that press conference, where all these esteemed media conglomerates all thought was important enough to be there, because they wouldn't have been there if they didn't think it was important. If they thought it was something to merely be ridiculed, they would have all attacked it the next day. But they did not, because they are worried that people are going to pay attention to this witness, that his polygraph test that came back positive is accurate, that he really did talk to the Intelligence Committee with the House, and the House is keeping it under wraps because it could really mean big revelations in this investigation. That witness said that those guys were bragging about the thumb drive on Seth Rich's person that was stolen from him. So it wasn't a botched robbery. It was actually a successful robbery, and that would make more sense than just killing somebody and leaving them on the ground. They were after something, most likely, and they got what they wanted because around, days after the Seth Rich death, which I believe was July 10th, later on that month, not even a week or two later, that's when Guccifer 2.0 dropped. Now, weirdly enough, if you look at some articles in June, they actually try to implicate Guccifer 2.0 very, very early, like June of 2016, but he hadn't released anything. But yet the government actually was saying that they knew he was going to release something, which made it even weirder. Because right after that, so it's like they knew that Seth Rich had breached them. They knew. I mean, that. By the way, that's speculation. But I'm saying this is what it could allude to. They knew that Seth Rich breached them, which is why they started reporting on this stuff in June, because they perhaps were trying to get ahead of the story just in case. Now, Seth Rich dies on July 10th. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's July 10th or 11th. And then a week and a half, 2 weeks later, Guccifer 2.0 drops. And they immediately blame Russia. But the last Guccifer, if I recall, was Ukrainian. So that doesn't really make any sense. So Mueller's indictment is not matching up with the witnesses' story. It's not matching up with the facts we already know about Guccifer 2.0, and it's not matching up with the Seth Rich investigation. So the original template document that Guccifer 2.0 used has been identified. The link is in the article, which, like I said, I'll post in the description. It is also the source of the presence of Warren Flood's name and can be found attached to one of the Podesta emails. It has RSIDs matching with Guccifer 2.0 with his first couple of documents. So the next bullet point, the Trump opposition research, which CrowdStrike claimed was targeted at the DNC apparently in late April 2016, isn't what Guccifer 2.0 actually presented to reporters. It also didn't come from the DNC. It was an attached file on one of John Podesta's emails, not the DNC's. This specific copy appears to have been edited by Tony Kark. Oh, so there are names. Anyway, so it was edited by Tony Kark shortly before it was sent to Podesta. The fact that Guccifer 2.0's initial releases were Podesta email attachments was even conceded by a former DNC official. Now, all these facts that are being claimed in the article, by the way, there are links to all of these things. So, which is one thing I always love about Disobedient Media. Shout out to Elizabeth Voss. Because they link the hell out of their articles. So anyway, it appears that Guccifer 2.0 fabricated evidence on June 15, 2016 that coincidentally dovetailed with multiple claims made by CrowdStrike executives that had been published the previous day. Guccifer 2.0 went to considerable effort to make sure Russian era messages appeared in copies of files given to the press. It's not projecting at all, I'm sure. Guccifer 2.0 went to considerable effort to make sure Russian era messages appeared in the copies of the files, and the evidence, which Guccifer 2.0 couldn't manipulate due to being logged by third parties, suggests that he was operating in the United States. And of course, the link for that's there as well. So additional evidence, which Guccifer 2.0 would have been unlikely to realize he or she was leaving, indicated that the persona was archiving the files in the United States time zones before its release. But email headers giving him away, or with email headers giving him away early on. Interesting. Virtually everything that has been claimed to indicate Guccifer 2.0 was Russian was based on something he chose to do, as in Guccifer 2.0, that he projected, which hackers generally don't do. They don't set themselves up to be discovered. And they definitely don't try to link themselves to a particular country, because most hackers consider themselves like, not attached to a particular sovereign nation. So considering that Guccifer 2.0 had access to Podesta's emails, yet never leaked anything truly damaging to the Clinton campaign, not like WikiLeaks did, even though he would have had access to it, it's highly suspicious. In fact, Guccifer 2.0 never referenced any of the scandals that would later explode when the DNC emails and John Podesta email collections were published later on by WikiLeaks. So, we know that this is a little bit different than what the indictments are trying to claim. Right? So the indictment says that starting at least in March 2016, the conspirators used a variety of means to hack the email accounts of volunteers and employees of the United States presidential campaign of Hillary Clinton, including the email account of the Clinton campaign's chairman. By, in, or around April 2016, the conspirators also hacked into the computer network of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Apparently that's a crime now. I didn't know that, because last time I checked, Imran Awan did the same thing and he just walked off scot-free. But whatever, that's cool. We're not gonna talk about that. But they were apparently monitoring the DCCC. And then they, beginning June 2016, conspirators staged and released tens of thousands of stolen documents. They did so using fictitious online personas, including DC Leaks and Guccifer 2.0. I actually didn't really see much from DC Leaks. And as far as June 2016, I'm assuming they're only referring to DC Leaks, because I know that Guccifer 2.0 didn't make his first drop until July. Like, they're claiming that it's June 2016. I looked up every possible release date, but that was when he made the announcement that he was going to drop the documents. That wasn't when the documents actually dropped. So, all in all, when you combine this with the fact that Trump is about to meet, or actually I think yesterday they did meet, he is meeting with Putin, probably to discuss something in Syria. Him and Putin are not, I don't think they're on as bad of terms as some would like them to be. And I don't think it's necessary. I think that Trump should be doing whatever he can to de-escalate the military-industrial complex and de-escalate the tension between undue tension, unnecessary tension between United States and Russia. And so I'm okay with him not being upset with Putin. I don't think Putin did anything wrong in this particular case. In light of the fact that Trump did meet with Putin, and in light of the fact that, we see this Peter Strzok, right? Peter Strzok has his hearing. I believe Lisa Page totally is not speaking at her hearing. Rod Rosenstein is getting implicated in a Seth Rich murder case that is getting closer and closer to being solved. Mind you, Jack Berkman, who is the lawyer, who's the attorney who brought this witness into the light, about a month ago, maybe not even a whole month ago, but roughly a month, he was actually killed by someone who was on the investigation with him. Well, not killed, shot at. Almost killed by someone, his name is Doherty, who was on the investigation with them. And unbeknownst to the witness, according to the witness, he's very familiar with Doherty because he works in that Black Ops Intel asset community. And obviously, this witness didn't just come out yesterday. The witness didn't come out a week ago. The witness has been prepped and ready to go and come forward for about 4 months. This information actually was being disseminated to different people. You can't give it to the DC because DC Metro is corrupt. But so with Rod Rosenstein being implicated in that, these indictments coming out, let's remember, people, it's all about controlling the narrative. They cannot and will not allow the people to believe that Seth Rich is somehow connected to the leaks. Because what happens is, it's not just about the reason. I used to think it was just like maybe it was solely to protect the image of the Hillary Clinton campaign and just the DNC's, their image in general. I don't think that was too far off, but I do think there is a whole nother component to it. It was being claimed as a botched robbery, which doesn't really make sense. Now, a robbery, a pinpointed, we know exactly where you're going to be at because we've been watching you and we have something particularly in mind that we need to take from you. That does make sense, right? If that USB that Seth Rich apparently never left alone, that's what's being claimed. If that USB is what was stolen, do you understand that this entire Russiagate narrative comes to a halt? What's more is that there's a potentiality of these indictments being announced when they were, because they knew that Donald Trump was not going to be in town to blast Rosenstein over this. Because you know that him and Rod Rosenstein have been going back and forth quite frequently as of late. Rod Rosenstein is not there because Donald Trump wants him. Rod Rosenstein finessed his way into that Deputy Attorney General's position because he's trying to set himself up to be the AG shortly after. It's kind of what happens. If not an AG, the Supreme Court justice. So there are a lot of moving parts, but I will say this. Literally, out of all the parallel stories, out of all of the parallel implications, this has the least merit. People, you're familiar with the term indictment because unfortunately we've seen so much, murders where cops were involved, that we should know that what is traditional about an indictment is that there has to be a healthy amount of evidence. Some of it can be circumstantial, but most of it needs to be like, we have really good reason to believe that this person is guilty, because it's going to cost a lot of money and time and effort. And you're going to have to bring people in and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is all speculation. This is all speculation. They just released an indictment totally based off of speculation. Mind you, the last time they released an indictment, the 13 Russian, agencies or 13 Russians that were working for an agency it was from 2014. And half of those people weren't even working. 3/4 of them weren't even working with that particular independent agency based out of Virginia whenever the election took place. But every move in politics is calculated. Every one of them. It's either Guccifer too. It's either that all the forensic evidence is lying. All the forensic evidence is wrong. All of it. Or the government's possibly lying to you for personal gain, to propagate the military-industrial complex and fear-monger to scare the hell out of you, so much so that you'll vote for whoever they want to the next election. Maybe. Could that possibly be it? I don't know. Maybe. I'm just saying. I am just I'm so exhausted from doing this. I'm so exhausted from doing this. Trump meets with Putin. 13 indictments, or excuse me, 12 indictments announced by Rod Rosenstein are announced after Trump meets with Putin, and then a couple of days after a witness who took a polygraph test already testified in front of the House Intelligence Committee just made a press release saying that DEA and ATF agent, who are literally Rosenstein's right-hand men, were involved in Seth Rich's murder. He's alleging this. Now, once again, I want you all to understand how serious that is, and because like the circumstances surrounding it are probably what made me pay attention more, because I didn't, people make all kinds of claims about the Seth Rich situation all the time. I trust very few sources when it comes to the Seth Rich discussion. I usually go to people who are in it from the very, 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 very beginning, and that's pretty much who I go to consistently. All the new people that came out later, I don't really follow them. But it's really weird to me that this press conference, which I thought would get no attention, right? Because every mainstream media platform tried to discount it, saying let it go. The family doesn't want anybody to talk about it, etc., etc., etc. But the Daily Beast shows up. Washington Post shows up. The Hill shows up. New York Times showed up. So along with the independent people who went, the mainstream media showed up. And the next day, the only one who wrote a scathing article about the press conference, as usual, is Daily Beast, because that's all they do. But everybody else just didn't mention it. The next day, they didn't ridicule him. They didn't attack the witness. They were trying to coax him into giving names. They were trying to make him give his name. They were trying to ask who specifically he talked to in Congress, which is a little scary. Because when somebody's saying, for my protection, I am not revealing this information, but it will be coming out over the next 3 weeks, why would you then continue to press such a dangerous issue that we know when we know people come up missing? I see that super chat. I write erotica. I appreciate it. But yeah, why would all of those publications and media outlets show up to not write about it, to not speak about it? That this is something that means potentially that Russia had absolutely nothing to do with this? Or better yet, if you are, because like I said, that it seems like that story would be unrelated to somebody who hasn't been literally dealing with this for the last 2 or 3 years. But when you take that fact with these indictments that little out of nowhere, right? They kind of don't. They're not. It's just reading it. It's like, what are you talking about? You just made this up. It's just kind of not real. And they do these things in the punditry, by the way, which I'm going to cover in a later episode. They do these things like, can you believe that certain people aren't going to believe these intelligence officers? Our American intelligence? How dare they? Do you know that during, I want to say the Bush administration, there had been employed to any of the major media outlets about 75 generals and former intelligence officers to go on and prop up the military-industrial complex, specifically about Iraq and Afghanistan. And they were given specific talking points. And it turned out that all 75 of them, in some way, form, or fashion, were employed by a military contractor, which means that they had a vested interest in those wars continuing. Not much different than what we heard Seymour Hersh say in that tape recording, where he said that, these people have to keep their retirement open. They don't want that flow of money to stop. So for people to say something like, I can't believe that people won't believe our intelligence community. How dare they? I say, thank God our country may be a lot worse off than it already is. But like I said, I hate to say the most obvious thing, but I feel like I kind of have to before I go. If and only if you cared about this damn breach of the DNC's servers. If and only if. That's if you care. Why not get the damn servers from the Democratic National Committee and investigate them? We grabbed text from Peter Strzok and Lisa Page from burner phones that didn't even exist anymore. And yet, we can't walk into a damn building and physically grab servers. And A. Mayers on YouTube said it exactly how I feel. Because they don't care. These indictments are not supposed to actually get people in, like, they're not supposed to get anybody in trouble. The Russians would never come here, so they would never be tried. Those particular Russians would never come here. They would never be tried. They will never be tried in this country. Let's be very clear about that. If they were to be tried, it would be our country would be countersued, and they would win for wasting their time and wasting their legal fees. Trump will never be impeached because of the Russian investigation. Mueller shouldn't even have a job anymore. We know all the bias that has been displayed by key officials in the intelligence world. And despite understanding these biases, Robert Mueller, for some reason, still has a damn job. And he's still allowed to do things that, to my knowledge, are out of his jurisdiction. But hey, the world keeps turning. Make sure to join me at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard, where I will be interviewing a candidate out of Minnesota, actually. I'm excited about that. And also, I will be going live again at 8, where I will be talking with Amanda Cummings of Actify Chat, and she will give her opinion about this Russiagate investigation, and some other things that have been going on out here in this crazy world. And so definitely gonna have a good time tonight. Got a couple more videos coming your way in the meantime. Outside of that, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in to this segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. But more than anything else, always remember, find your balance. Peace.